As Benjamin Franklin once said, "In this world, nothing can be said to be certain except death and taxes." I'd like to propose an addendum to that phrase. Nothing can be said to be certain except death, taxes, and seeing Clint Howard's face.
I am not what you would call a handsome man. The good Lord chose not to bless me with charm, athletic ability, or a fully functional brain.
I don't think it's ridiculous at all to say that character actor Clint Howard is an icon. With over 247 credits on IMDb and a career spanning over 5 decades, you've definitely seen him in something, and if you haven't, you will. It's just a matter of time. He's built up a reputation, dare I say a cult following, for playing odd, eccentric characters.
You play a great stooge, a great dumb guy, don't you?
I think there's a lot of bit of that in me.
He's a consummate professional, and physically, and I mean this with love, he's an odd-looking guy. And that always helps when you're a character actor.
You look a little borderline crazy looking, and it's stomach ache kind of thing when people look at you.
Clint is an actor who knows what he is, what he can do, accepts it, and just wants to work.
It looks like I'm going to have one of those kind of odd, eclectic, wide-ranging careers. I honestly don't really care if it's a horror movie or a comedy or a big-budget movie or a little-budget movie, although the difference is, the big-budget movies pay more, and the craft service is better.
He's like the Forrest Gump of film history. While all these milestone projects came and went, he was there, offering sandwiches to Barney Fife, negotiating with Captain Kirk, arguing over tip money with Jerry Seinfeld, helping the Apollo 13 astronauts get back to Earth, putting the Wonders on the air, and occasionally terrorizing the public as some kind of rapist, murderer, or sadistic ice cream vendor.
You little turds are gonna have to learn you can't run from the ice cream man!
He spent his entire acting career on the sidelines, and it's time to give him the spotlight, if only for a short time. Ladies and gentlemen, may I introduce to you Clint Howard. Before we start, I just wanted to take a moment and thank you all for being supportive with these videos and checking out this one about Clint Howard. If you like what you see, subscribe, tell people, share these videos if you haven't already, and we want to thank all of our patrons on Patreon for supporting this video as well. If you can, please support us on Patreon. Any little bit of support goes a long way. Thank you, and enjoy the video. Now, in order to get some context on who Clint Howard is and where he came from, I think an obvious place to start would be the Howard family. As many of you probably already know, Clint is the brother of Ron Howard, a celebrated actor in his early life for shows like The Andy Griffith Show and Happy Days, and a well-deserved award-winning director as an adult with a gargantuan filmography under his belt, most of which Clint Howard has appeared in. Both Ron and Clint grew up in the business, thanks largely in part to their parents. Their father, Rance Howard, was an actor who met their mother, Jean Spiegel, also an actress, and they moved to New York in the early 1950s for work. Rance, who was good on a horse, made his bread and butter appearing in westerns, and he continued acting well into his old age. Their mother, Jean Spiegel, retired from acting initially after having Ron, but got back into it later in life, carving out a nice niche playing sweet old lady types. With parents like these, Ron and Clint got into acting sort of by osmosis. The Howards picked up and moved to Burbank, California to pursue more acting opportunities in the booming film and television industry. And that's when Ron Howard, of course, got his first big break as Opie in The Andy Griffith Show in 1960. It was right around then when Clint Howard's career began, again just by simply being around the business all the time. It's like it was inevitable. Born in 1959, Clint made his television debut at 2 years old in this episode of The Andy Griffith Show. No lines, just a quick gag.
I happened to be on the set being babysat that day. Mom would normally not be with Ron. Mom was normally home with me. But my dad had an acting job somewhere, and so Mom had to watch Ron, and I came along, and the director saw me on the set and said, "Oh, that's too cute," because I would wear my little cowboy outfit. I would play in my little cowboy outfit, and they basically just picked me up and put me in a sequence.
To this day, Clint apparently has a framed picture of his tax return from 1961 solely from earnings for this episode of The Andy Griffith Show. His character didn't even have a name until his second episode. His name was Leon, and he was part of a running gag where he would kind of catch Barney Fife in some kind of unscrupulous situation, innocently offering him a peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
No thanks, Leon. Move along, Leon. Let's keep this area clear.
It was around this time Clint actually started going on auditions, with his father, much like he did for Ron, acting as a mentor and coach. And I think an important thing to bring up here is that his parents were not the stereotypical stage parents. It's not that difficult nowadays to come across stories of child actors being taken advantage of, whether it's their parents stealing their money or, God forbid, some other adult preying upon them in some awful way. But both Clint and Ron have said nothing but good things about the environment that they grew up in. They were never forced to do anything they didn't want to do. It wasn't toxic whatsoever, and their parents strived for some semblance of normalcy.
You know, it seems so outrageous that we were a family of working people.
A family of working actors?
But it was so normal.
To you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, we played Burbank Park and Rec basketball.
Sure.
Baseball. I played Little League baseball. I played on the high school baseball team. Mom and Dad thought it was really important that we live as normal lives away from the workplace as possible.
Yeah.
And although acting was fun for both of them, another important thing that their father especially stressed was that it was a job, and it should be treated as such. I've always thought it was interesting that acting is really one of the only professions in which children are working alongside adults with the same job description. Clint also clearly looks up to his big brother and cites him as a reason why he was so drawn to the acting world in the first place. And so, following in his brother's footsteps, Clint started auditioning and landing parts, the same kinds of parts that Ron would get. The cute kid.
A mountain! I'm shocked!
He couldn't even read yet, but his father would help him with the characters and whatever he needed. Clint made the rounds on some of the biggest shows in the 60s, like The Fugitive and Bonanza, which was actually a pretty big dramatic role for him.
Don't die.
He played Michael, whose father's dying from a gunshot wound, and after being told that only God can help him, embarks on a mission to find God and ask for help. It was also around this time that Clint first started collaborating with his brother, Ron. As we mentioned before, and as you may already know, Ron has cast Clint in some supporting role in nearly every movie he's directed. It all started when Ron was working on Andy Griffith, and he started experimenting with a camera that Andy Griffith gave him as a gift, and frequently cast his family in his own short films. Clint Howard made several appearances, the first one being Cards, CADS, Guns, Gore, and Death. It's a great window into the fun, collaborative environment that the entire family took part in. It kind of reminds me of when I would have my parents or my friends act in something while I was just fooling around with the camera. And Clint looked up to his brother so much, I'm sure he was only happy to oblige as a gun-toting poker player. Clint went on to star in 2 other westerns directed by R.W. Howard, as he was known in his own credits. In Old Paint, the whole family joins in. There's Gene Spiegel Howard and Clint as a grieving mother and son who are shown kindness by a mysterious Good Samaritan, played by Rance. And in Deed of Daring Do, Clint played a character that must have felt close to home, a kid using his imagination to have fun on a film set. Apparently, when Ron respectfully asked Clint what his rate for an actor would be, Clint managed to negotiate 50% of the gross. Well, the film ended up coming in second prize in a national film contest for teenage directors sponsored by Kodak, and Ron begrudgingly had to split a $100 prize with him.
And the dough comes in, and I say, "Hey, great, the money's here. I'll take mine." And Ron didn't want to give it to me, and I think Dad had to step in and said, "A deal's a deal," you know. And Ron had to peel me off $50.
But Clint was doing so much more at the time than just starring in Ron's shorts. 3 years prior to Deed of Daring Do, he had already nabbed a supporting role in a feature-length western, An Eye for an Eye.
I start my day's work at 5:30. Meet me out in the corral.
He provided the voice of an elephant in Disney's The Jungle Book.
Can I do it too? Sure. Just do what I do. But don't talk and ring.
Is it just me, or did they kind of make his character look like him? And of course, he played a pivotal role in this iconic episode of Star Trek, the Corbomite Maneuver. He played Baylock, who, in sort of a Wizard of Oz-esque way, has been tormenting the Enterprise using an alien puppet. Near the end of the episode, the Enterprise crew boards Baylock's ship to see that he is, in fact, similar to like a small child.
We think much alike, Captain.
Clint's voice was dubbed by another actor, Walter Edmiston, but Clint still had to learn all the dialogue and come off as an adult, sharing his favorite drink, Tranya, as a sign of goodwill. In real life, the Tranya was grapefruit juice, which Clint hated and complained to his father about, and his father just told him to think of it as an acting challenge. Drink something you hate and pretend that you really enjoy it. Clint would later reprise this role for the 2006 Comedy Central roast of William Shatner. Again, dubbed by another actor, Baylock is older now and addicted to Tranya like an alcoholic. One last milestone of Clint's childhood was his first series regular role in a TV show, Gentle Ben. He starred as Mark, the son of a game warden in the Florida Everglades, whose best friend is a bear. Probably not a good idea in real life, but apparently the bear was a vegetarian and very docile.
I think Ben's in trouble.
The show ran for 2 seasons in the late 60s, and although it was eventually canceled, it was a highlight for Clint. Not only was it more experience, but he got to act alongside people like Burt Reynolds, Slim Pickens, and his father, Rance Howard, was a recurring character. Even his brother Ron joined them for a couple episodes. Clint was so proud of this show and the Howard family in general, as Gentle Ben and The Andy Griffith Show were both on the air at the time. To this day, he thanks Gentle Ben for eventually allowing him to buy his first house. Into the early 70s, Clint grew older, sharper, and never went a year without working, even after Gentle Ben. Pick a popular show in the early 70s, he was probably a part of it. Gunsmoke, The Virginian, The Odd Couple.
Don't do that.
And one of my personal favorites was his performance as Herbie Bittman, a kid who has the ability to predict future natural disasters in Rod Serling's follow-up to The Twilight Zone, Night Gallery. But when he gains knowledge of an impending apocalypse, he can't bring himself to tell the world. His final scene where he sadly tells his father the truth is a highlight of his dramatic work as a kid.
It'll happen so quickly. You won't even feel it. And nobody else will feel it either. They'll just expect it to be a better day. Maybe afterwards. That's what it will be.
But as we get into the mid-70s, an important question needs to be answered. We've seen Clint as this cute kid, and we've seen Clint as the crazy asshole he became later in life.
You owe me $50!
You said it was gonna be a touchdown pass, you crazy asshole.
Go, 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 go!
The question is, and how to put this delicately, what happened? When did this transformation take place? With every child actor growing into an adult, there's this kind of awkward window of time where they're kind of playing teenage characters, but they may also be losing out roles to people who are 18 years old because of child labor laws. This was actually what happened with Ron Howard. He was losing out roles to people who were 18 or older to play younger because, hey, it was easier to hire someone who wasn't a minor. In Clint Howard's case, it's a fascinating change to watch on screen because Clint's window of time between child and adult seemed smaller than most. And it probably has to do with him going bald very young. Ron Howard had it a bit easier and didn't go bald until well into his late 20s as Happy Days was coming to an end. Clint, on the other hand, started losing his hair around 16 years old. There were a few interim projects before the Clint Howardization began. He played a kid with autism in this episode of Moving On. He acted alongside Michael Douglas in this episode of The Streets of San Francisco as a scared kid who's been wrongly accused of murdering his friend's stepfather. Then in a few projects, he passed as a high school student, but I'd say just barely. Like Eat My Dust alongside his brother Ron.
Hey, Darlene, what you got inside them short shorts?
And Cotton Candy, directed by Ron. As Clint grew older, the characters grew more eccentric. An interesting missing link between child Clint Howard and adult Clint Howard is this 1975 TV movie adaptation of Huckleberry Finn.
You know there's a $200 reward for that slave?
First of all, it's worth mentioning that the entire Howard family acts in this. Ron Howard is Huckleberry, his mom plays his mom, his dad plays his dad, and Clint played Arch, a stable boy.
I know what I call it. Get down!
There's also Grand Theft Auto, in which Clint played one of several people trying to stop Ron's character from eloping with his girlfriend in Las Vegas. It's also worth bringing up Clint's 2 episodes of Happy Days, one as a criminal and one as Junior, the son of one of Richie Cunningham's dad's friends at a fraternity lodge. Eventually, Clint seemed to be settling into a niche playing the streetwise, oddball characters of high school. You know, the eccentric friend who's always trying to get the main character laid. So by the time Rock and Roll High School came around in 1979, you'd think he'd play that kind of character. But this movie wasn't your typical high school sex comedy. It was absurdist and over the top in a lot of fun ways, and it actually starred punk legends the Ramones. Clint played Eagle Bauer, a guy who set up his office in the bathroom stall of the high school and runs this sort of underground racket of setting couples up with each other, among other things.
The whole school's in turmoil. Well, look at this. Fake IDs down 50%, test answers down 60%, hall passes are falling off the board. Let's get back to you. Tell me exactly what you want out of life.
I want someone with huge breasts. The sweet, stirring, passionate youth.
I can't tell if he's an actual student at the school because the way he's playing this character is like a used car salesman who's 10 years older. It's a fun characterization, and it was a great part for him, but this may have marked the beginning of the end for Clint in terms of high school roles. Getting into the 1980s, there are a couple projects that are definitely worth bringing up.
By the dreadful day of judgment, by the face of the divine majesty, and by the 4 beasts before the throne, the consecrated host.
He had his first lead role in a feature film called Evil Speak, in which he played an insecure military cadet who summons demons with a computer to exact revenge on his tormentors.
Far f***ing out. It works.
Clint cited this movie as kind of a coming-of-age period of his life, for one specific reason.
I had sex for the first time while making this picture.
Also worth noting, he wore a hairpiece for this role. I guess at 22 years old, if a director wanted him to have a full head of hair, this was the only way to do it from then on. The same goes for another film Clint did in the 80s that's worth mentioning, the 1986 action horror romance, The Wraith.
Okay, the first one, the Dragonfire Crossing wins! You lose the race, you lose your car!
Alright, let's figure out how to describe this. It involves a mysterious street racer who comes back from the dead to exact revenge on the gang of street racers that killed him. I guess that's the best way to put it. After writer-director Mike Marvin saw Clint in a short film he did with Michael Keaton, he brought him in to audition for Rughead, the kind of eccentric, techie gearhead of the group. With a gigantic Eraserhead-esque hairpiece and Coke bottle glasses, Clint created this fun kind of spazzy character.
But now that there's that wraith out there that killed Augie...
What out there, man?
A wraith, man! A ghost! An evil spirit, and it ain't cool! I don't know. Except I'm quitting. And if I was you guys, I'd quit too.
He's just fun to watch, just this subservient, lesser gang member who seems like he's really only around because he knows stuff about cars. But despite these bigger supporting roles, Clint didn't do that much in the 1980s. Yes, he pretty much appeared in almost one movie a year in that decade. However, most of these characters were smaller, usually just 1 or 2 scenes. And that's because he actually took kind of a break from acting at this point. Some of the only other projects he appeared in were little bit parts in his brother's films. Like a high school kid hiring Michael Keaton to drive him to prom in Night Shift.
$20, right?
$20, thanks.
A wedding guest for Tom Hanks to yell at in Splash.
Hey, Alan. She left me! She moved out and my life's a shambles, okay?
An asshole orderly in Cocoon.
You gents just keep sucking on that oxygen. They'll probably go back to their own planet.
And an obnoxious parent at a Little League game in Parenthood.
He had no business being out there! No business!
He also apparently started a punk rock band called the Kempsters. You heard it right, Clint Howard was in a punk rock band. But I haven't yet explained why Clint took a break from acting. The specifics are a little muddled, but the broad answer can be found in a 1998 People magazine article. Samantha Miller writes, in the early 80s, the former child star took a break from showbiz that turned into a decade of alcohol abuse. Quote, I wanted to goof around and party for a couple years, and the party just didn't stop. This kind of paints his cameos in his brother films in a different light. Ron gave him roles in his movies to, quote, help him out and get his face on the screen. Ron Howard said, I would talk to him about how he was undermining his talent. Clint apparently hit a rock bottom sort of around the end of 1991. He joined Alcoholics Anonymous, and as of 1998 at least, he had been sober. To this day, I can't speak for his sobriety, but he does vaguely talk about this period of his life in past tenses when he's interviewed.
As a young man, I certainly made horrible mistakes that a much younger man makes. And then needing to get kind of myself back on track and getting my career going, I worked in everything.
I understand being guarded about it. You know, it's a tough thing to go through and admit to, especially when somebody unknowingly asks you a kind of insensitive question in an interview like this.
So how do you account for both you and your brother Ron being among the few former child stars who didn't turn out to be like major burnout drug addicts? That always happens to child stars.
Yeah, well, there's a simple answer to that, and that's Mom and Dad. They are such...
close-knit family.
Yeah, and they are just people of the earth, down-to-earth, regular people. I mean, my dad is a farm boy, and my mom is the daughter of a butcher. Ooh, the daughter of a butcher.
Yeah, that does explain a lot about you.
Yeah!
True to his word, Clint decided to take any job he could to get his career back on track. That is the reason you've seen him in every movie ever made by humans since 1991. Apparently, the only major thing he ever turned down was a part in the Flintstones. Now, when I heard him say that, I thought, are you sure, Clint? Because I'm pretty certain I saw you in the Flintstones as one of Fred's bowling buddies. Hold on, let me check.
Doesn't get any better than this.
Oh, okay, never mind. That was Irwin Keyes. But you see, that right there is the magic of Clint Howard. Thanks to his determination and work ethic, he's become so ingrained in our memories that we know we've seen him in something before, even when there is hard evidence that he just wasn't. Getting into the 1990s, Clint slowly but surely started appearing in more projects. Sure, there was the occasional role in a Ron Howard film.
All the gory details.
But perhaps even more entertaining is his foray into low-budget, straight-to-video films, especially horror movies.
When are we gonna see the death houses?
He's right at home playing the head you just don't like right off the bat, who then gets brutally murdered by some bizarre creature like a dinosaur or a giant tick. He's also good at playing the stooge, the right-hand man of a villain, like when he helps track down Bigfoot for his boss in Bigfoot: The Unforgettable Encounter.
I see him!
And hey, look, Rance Howard sighting. He's very elusive. Or slaughtering Native Americans in Cheyenne Warrior. Even when he's not a part of the actual horror aspect of a horror movie, he'll pop up.
Now, I am not scared. You can wait for her at this really cute ice cream parlor right down the block.
And hey, speaking of ice cream, there's no way we cannot mention his first lead role in a film since Evil Speak, Ice Cream Man.
Yummy. You know, we should swap recipes. A creamsicle for custard pie.
This is the film that you walked into Blockbuster and saw all the time in the horror section, but never actually rented. Or maybe I'm just talking about me here. In a film that had a budget of $2 million that was made up of money primarily from porn productions and a Converse sponsorship, Clint played Gregory Tudor, a mentally disturbed ice cream man who slaughters and dismembers people to use as ingredients in his ice cream. I don't really need to explain it further than that. This movie is everything that you think it is, and Clint's performance is in another solar system.
Kinda makes your head spin. Yeah, looks like yours spun right off.
Boy, I didn't know you cops had such a hearty sense of humor.
It's just so much fun to watch, and apparently there was a Clint Howard Film Festival in 1995 with Ice Cream Man as the headliner of the night. People were given free booze at the festival, so by the time Ice Cream Man rolled around near the end, everyone was in the perfect mindset to watch a so-bad-it's-good horror movie in all its glory.
Thanks, Ice Cream Man.
So now comes the task of going through this Renaissance era of Clint Howard that has gone on for nearly 3 decades, and I just don't know how to do this. I mean, there's no way to touch on everything, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna do it in chunks. First, let's go over the highlights, the roles that made an impression on audiences the most, which would arguably be the films that Ron Howard cast him in.
Of course, my brother Clint has a nice role. Thank God. Because when I don't put him in the movie, I hear from the Clint Howard fan club, and they're a very vocal group. They may not be, huge in number, but man, they let me know when he's not in a movie. So I've got a nice part for Clint, rest assured.
Clint has talked about how Ron casts him in movies in multiple interviews, and it's as simple as this. Clint asks Ron,
"Hey bud, you got anything in this one for me? What can I do?"
And Ron gives him the script, and Clint looks through the entire script to see what part he could play. It's never lead roles, of course, it's just kind of supporting characters, a scene here, a scene there, but that just goes to show you that Clint knows his place in the movie-making world. There's not too much ego here, it's not like he's fighting for the romantic lead, he knows how to cast himself. For example, in one of Clint's most prominent roles in a Ron Howard project, Apollo 13, he played Cy Liebergott, a member of the NASA team on the ground that helped save the astronauts.
We can isolate it there, and we can save what's left in the tanks, and we can run on the good cell.
You close them, you can't open them again. You can't land on the moon with one healthy fuel cell.
Gene, the Odyssey is dying. From my chair here, this is the last option.
In an interview for the LA Times in 1995, Clint said, "I knew I was perfect to play one of those NASA guys. I told him, hey, I'm one of those faces, and I'm the right age." And again, this was a multiple Howard family member project.
The Fury.
Some other notable roles. He played Hubris, who's sort of the mayor's lackey in How the Grinch Stole Christmas.
Last round, come on, you gotta show me something. Give me a good
You
one.
are giving me an ulcer, Harry.
Shut up.
He played a referee in Cinderella Man, and that's just great casting. Again, he looks like a boxing referee. I don't know what a boxing referee is supposed to look like, but it's just him. He looks like one.
Here, gentlemen, we have to take a break.
And he played the director of the Richard Nixon interview in Frost, Nixon.
3, 2, and...
Next, I'd like to touch on a few projects that I personally knew him from. The same may go for a lot of people in my generation. Because of Clint's omnipresence in this industry, it's impossible for me to determine when I first saw him, but if I had to guess, it was probably in Austin Powers' International Man of Mystery as this radar operator.
He's back. Well, in many ways, the big boy never left, sir. He's always offered the same high-quality meals at competitive prices.
I continued to be aware of him in comedies like this, especially when he reprised his role in the subsequent Austin Powers movies, and then popped up in a couple Adam Sandler films. You got Paco and The Waterboy, and I don't remember a lot of Little Nicky because that was when I just started phasing out of watching Adam Sandler movies, but I do remember this throwaway gag in Little Nicky.
Oh.
I remembered the scene, but I didn't realize it was him.
Good luck with the nipple rubbing. I don't need luck. I'm good.
Another part of Clint's career that I was really interested in is those times he played against type, doing something you might not expect. For example, in this episode of Silk Stockings, he was a suave, charismatic love interest that charms a local swimsuit model.
Oh, please, I just want you to sign it.
No, why can't you just leave me alone?
In My Dog Skip, he played a fun-loving animal lover. And I think we probably all remember where we were when we first saw his tender love scene in Street Corner Justice. Alright, so there's not a lot of against-type roles. He just plays weirdos a lot. We all knew this going in. The question is, as Joe Bob Briggs from TNT's Monster Vision so delicately put it,
why do you think you get cast to play so many wackos?
I don't know, Joe Bob. I don't know, it's just something I can do.
Well, it's like, Your brother gets cast to play the most white bread characters in the history of the world, and you get cast to play the opposite.
Well, I'll tell you what, George Wendt put it really well. We worked on Gung Ho together, George and I. And George looked at me one day and said, "You're the brother from another planet."
I think it's obvious that his unique look has a lot to do with it, and this is something that Clint is definitely aware of. He's just good at playing odd, over-the-top characters. We've already touched on a lot of these, but for some of his weirdest characters, we can thank German director Uwe Boll.
Smiling, all your idols.
Why? They always ask why.
In House of the Dead, Clint played the first mate of a small ship where he wore this ridiculous yellow... And where is her shirt?
Hey, I'm on the pill.
What is happening?
Protect you and your friends from harm.
Well, she's dead. And there goes Clint. In Blood Rain, the Third Reich, he played a mad scientist studying vampires in an effort to make Hitler immortal.
Which is why you never trust a vampire.
And in the Nazi comedy Blubberella, he played a mad scientist studying vampires in an effort to make Hitler immortal? Wait, what the
What are you doing?
Okay, so this is complicated. Listen up. They shot this scene twice in the same day in 2 different ways and did one take for drama for one movie and the other for comedy for another movie. I mean, they definitely did. The production design and costumes are identical. Wow. I mean, that's weird. That is weirder than Clint Howard. That's weirder than, say, the Clint Howard variety show. So way before YouTube and web series were kind of a regular thing, Clint hosted his own odd talk show in a backlot somewhere in the San Fernando Valley, where he did unusual skits and interviewed guests, paying them with a turkey and $20.
It's all in ones. This is great.
And of course, Ron and Rance made appearances.
You know, Webster's dictionary defines an artist as one who professes and practices an imaginative art. A skilled performer. I guess I fall into that category.
At the end of the day, Clint Howard's biggest strength is just making any small role in a TV show or movie memorable. And sure, most of these characters seem to lean toward the creepy or odd side. He just looks like a guy who would have 4 locks on his door and peer out from the other side suspiciously. Or be one of the, quote, most important customers of a whorehouse.
She's fair game. I know she's got a price.
It's easy to look at some of these over-the-top examples and laugh. They're so extreme and a little cliche sometimes and ridiculous, but it doesn't matter because Clint just commits to the absurdity and goes for it.
Flaccid dicks, Mr. President.
But I think most would agree that his best, most nuanced, subtle characters are the ones in his brother's films. In Apollo 13, Frost, Nixon, and Cinderella Man, Clint's characters feel more like real people. And I think Ron and Clint together had good instincts on collaborating and finding what characters he would be good to play. They were highlights of his life and career personally. Although I'm not sure any of these roles may be compared to one of the biggest highlights of Clint Howard's life.
Clint Howard.
His Lifetime Achievement Award he received on the 1998 MTV Movie Awards.
I never got an award like this. I was really nervous, and I had been dialoguing with God all day, like, please, God, help me not to throw up on myself.
This particular Lifetime Achievement Award was pretty much a joke. The year previous, it was awarded to Chewbacca. So I guess in 1998, they thought, hey, it might be funny to give a Lifetime Achievement Award to an actor that was primarily known for bit parts as oddballs and weirdos. When Clint was originally told he was receiving the award, he started to write kind of a jokey acceptance speech, knowing that it's a joke. But his father, Rance Howard, told him to do something else. The crowd really got behind him because he took it so seriously and was genuinely touched that people appreciated his work.
It was also nice because they had the house lights up. I could see Ron, and I could see that he was really tickled for me.
And Ron, you're a great older brother. You're a pretty good director. You're a great older brother.
Afterwards, MTV officially retired the Lifetime Achievement Award.
Clint Howard receiving the Lifetime Achievement Award pretty much, killed the award because we felt like we couldn't do any better than that, and as evident by the fact that we have not given out the Lifetime Achievement Award since then.
It's kind of a great way to sum up Clint's career. Here's a man who has made a living out of playing supporting characters that you're not necessarily supposed to remember or take seriously or even like. But this is his life and his career, and it's all important to him from his perspective, like he's living in this. And in this brief moment on the MTV Movie Awards when an audience stood up and applauded, he didn't care that maybe some of it was ironic. It really didn't matter if it was, because above all, it was love. Maybe love for an underdog of the industry who is always nice and a perfect professional on set. Nowadays, Clint Howard still lives in Burbank, California. He and Ron are still close, continuing to collaborate together on the odd movie here and there. Most recently, Clint was Rala Keeley in Solo: A Star Wars Story. As for Clint and Ron's parents, they've both passed away, but not before living to a ripe old age. Jean Spiegel Howard died in 2000 with her last film role in the indie drama The Hiding Place. Rance Howard never retired officially from acting. Despite passing away in 2017, he still has several projects in post-production. And hey, he appeared in The Christ Slayer as the Devil with a previous supporting actor spotlight subject, Josh the Ponce Man Perry. Kind of a cool crossover. Clint Howard certainly grew up with an amazing family, although he never had one of his own. Despite not having children, he's got 3 nieces and a nephew from Ron, who married his literal high school sweetheart Cheryl. Clint continues to not only be proud of his brother for his achievements, but also his nieces, who are both actresses, Paige Howard and the Golden Globe-nominated Bryce Dallas Howard.
All right, well, everyone knows Hollywood loves heroes.
As for his own career, Clint still plays oddballs. Some names of his upcoming characters include Weird Carney and Mr. Baggy Britches. I love it. He's continued his place in the Star Trek legacy. I didn't really touch on these, but he's had appearances over the years in Deep Space Nine and Enterprise, and he was most recently in Star Trek Discovery. He used to golf a lot, but after getting both hips replaced, he became an avid snow globist. They're a real passion for Clint.
Let's not say snow globes are my passion. That sounds really weird.
He even appeared nude with them in a picture he posted on his now abandoned Twitter account. Hey, you know what? Good for you, Clint. Be nude with your snow globes, okay? That just reinforces how completely self-aware he is as an actor. To close this episode out, I'd like to play a clip from an interview with Clint on Gilbert Gottfried's Amazing Colossal podcast. He has a great way of summing up his legacy.
I'm not a doctor. I don't shape social ideas. I'm an entertainer. It's like I work at the Midway at the Carnival. I have a booth. Or I work
I
at a
love
booth.
that analogy.
And every day I open my little cigar box and people walk by and I have my little act. And they drop coins in my cigar box. At the end of the day, I close that cigar box and, oh, look, I made a living. And look, there's been people that have been entertained.
Well, Clint, we don't have any coins, but we at least have this video. So when you open your cigar box tonight, we hope you find this well. Thanks for your work, Mr. Howard.